My name is Eva Horn. I'm a professor of modern German literature at the Department of German Studies. One of my fields of expertise is literature and environmentalism. My current research focuses on the cultural aspects of the Anthropocene as well as climate and climate change from a humanities perspective. I am the founder of the Vienna Anthropocene Network and a member of the Anthropocene Working Group. In this video, you will learn what the Anthropocene concept means and how it can be addressed by different disciplines, because the current environmental crisis is not only a research topic for the natural sciences, but also for the social sciences and the humanities. I believe that a cultural perspective on climate is important for rethinking our relation to nature, and more specifically to climate, to air quality, and the atmospheres that surround us. We need to face the fact that we are destabilizing the very ground that we stand on, the climates we live in, and the air that we breathe. First of all, what is the Anthropocene? The Anthropocene is a term suggested to describe the present as a period in which human activities are massively changing the ecological state of the planet. These changes are so profound that geologists and Earth system scientists have suggested that we no longer live in the Holocene, but in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is thought to have started in the mid of the 20th century. The current environmental diagnosis of the Anthropocene comprises several environmental dimensions. The Stockholm Resilience Center has made a list of 9 processes that regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth systems, and they have determined limits for human pressure on these 9 factors. These limits are called planetary boundaries, taking as reference points the pre-industrial state of the Earth. As you can see, currently 6 out of 9 of these factors are already exceeding these boundaries. So, in addition to the triple crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental pollution, we are facing critical thresholds of other important elements of the Earth system. These are, for example, land use, freshwater availability, the biogeochemical flows of phosphor and nitrate, and novel entities, meaning human-made materials and organisms. All of these factors are interconnected and affect one another. The Anthropocene is thus a complex situation which consists of several simultaneous and interacting crises that can and will lead to catastrophic outcomes. But because of the many contributing factors, the nature and intensity of such catastrophes are very hard to predict. Dealing with environmental crisis in the Anthropocene means dealing exactly with this complexity and with the ways human activities, social dynamics, and the dynamics of nature are inevitably intertwined. Everything we consume, every technology we use, every move we make have environmental consequences, and these environmental effects will in turn affect societies all over the planet. So, in a second step, I would like to elaborate on the social and cultural questions that an understanding of the Anthropocene raises. These are, in a nutshell, questions of responsibility, meaning past, present, and future responsibilities. We need to ask which cultural, economic, social, political, and technological developments have led to the current state of the Earth, and which of these factors today still effectively prevent potential solutions to it. These are perspectives from the humanities and the social sciences on the Anthropocene. It means essentially addressing 3 sets of questions. First, how did we get here? What are the historical developments that led to the Anthropocene? How, for example, did a new understanding of nature as pure matter foster the transition to a mechanical and materialistic worldview with nature as a mere resource? How did the rise of capitalism and colonialism contribute to the advent of an economy that is focused on infinite growth? These are questions asked, for example, by historians, cultural theorists, philosophers, and political scientists. Secondly, where are we now? What are the social and economical mechanisms that drive the ecological crisis and that resist a transition to more sustainable societies? Who are the winners and who are the losers and victims of the planetary crisis? And if, like me, you're interested in narratives, you may ask, what narratives and images shape, for example, the perception of climate change? Why is climate change a thing that seems so abstract and remote from our everyday life? How could it be brought closer to home? And thirdly, what should we do about it? This perspective looks at the normative sphere of the problem, the legal and ethical challenges of the Anthropocene. First and foremost, this perspective will have to address questions of justice and inequality. It concerns, for example, the justice between the fossil-intense lifestyles of the global north and the low-emission societies of the global south. These societies, even though they contribute significantly less to climate change, often bear the brunt of the weather disasters, inundation, and droughts caused by it. Normative questions also concern intergenerational justice. How can we preserve the planet for future generations? What are our obligations towards generations that live after us or to other non-human living beings? What are the ethical rules and values that we need in order to fulfill these obligations? These are just a few examples how to address the Anthropocene from the humanities and the social sciences. What becomes clear from these examples is that the ecological crisis of the present is also a social and cultural crisis, and that it needs approaches from multiple angles and disciplines, which we present in this MOOC. Let's come to my last point. What about my own field as a scholar of cultural and literary history? In my latest research, I have focused on the cultural history of climate, specifically a history of climate perception. How did former cultures see their climates? How did they relate to the air they were breathing? Literature and art are excellent media to understand such historical attitudes. What surprised me in my research was the intense relation that former times had with the climate, the air, the weather people lived in. Climate was understood as something that was intricately connected with culture and that gave a sense of identity to a society because everybody lived in the same climate. Climate and weather were also believed to strongly influence health. This led to a keen sensitivity for the quality and state of the air, of weather, and of the seasons. Until the beginning of the 20th century, culture was intimately connected with climate, and climate, in turn, was understood culturally. Think about the many poems that you know about the spring or about the depressing effects of a rainy day. Let me give you one historical example. It is a painting by William Turner from 1842 called Snowstorm. It shows a steamboat caught in a brutal storm, but it also shows the steam and exhaust from the coal-fueled ship that looks as if it were sinking any minute. Yet the main object of the picture is not the boat, but the weather, the atmosphere and its turbulences. Turner said that his goal was not to paint a storm from the outside, but to show what it is like to be inside this storm. Turner gives us a glimpse from the inside of the storm, not its effects, not its meteorological data, but an aesthetic impression of the drama of being in the weather. This weather, however, is already marked by the onset of the industrial age and the massive use of fossil energy that led to air pollution and climate change as we know it today. The steam and smoke of the ship are part of the storm in which it is caught. So already in the 19th century, the weather is perceived as something that is a mix of both technological exhausts and meteorological conditions. The air is no longer natural, but a medium where technological and social impacts meet with meteorological and geographical conditions. What I learned from this painting is that people in former times had a much keener sense of being involved in and affected by the air, the weather, and the winds. Today, most of us have lost this sense of involvement. We define climate as the average weather, as a statistical set of data, and we speak of climate mainly in terms of climate change and very abstract notions such as global climate. So we have cut ourselves off from a sense of connection with the climate, individually and collectively. This distance from climate, this abstractness of climate, is one of the reasons why we have such a hard time dealing with climate change as a very concrete and palpable problem. Rethinking our relation to nature, or more exactly, our existential dependence on clean air and climate stability, could help us to really grasp the urgency of effective climate protection. We may want to think of ourselves as passenger on that ship in Turner's painting. And the Anthropocene is the storm we are caught in.